Hi, this is Gail Nettles with Beaded Jewelry Diva, and today's project is going to be this bracelet. And what we're going to cover today is how to use wire guardians, crimp tubes, and crimp covers to go ahead and use with beading wire to attach your bracelet to your clasp. Let's go ahead and take a look at the supplies that you're going to need for this. Here's what we're using for today's project. I have some beading wire, probably 8 to 10 inches long. I have some beads. I have some sterling silver beads. I have some crystals. I have some pearls. I have a sterling silver clasp, a pair of crimping pliers, a pair of chain nose pliers, and the stars of our show today. I have some crimp covers. I think these are like 3 millimeters. I have some crimping tubes, which I believe are 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters, and I have some wire guardians. Let's go ahead and get started. We're starting with the wire guardian. Now, what the purpose of this is to go ahead and hold, or to be between the clasp and the wire so that the wire doesn't abrade. The inside of this guardian is going to be rubbing up against the clasp instead of the beading wire. What this is it has a couple of little tubes you see on one end. The other end, let's see if I can get a good shot of that. The other end is like an open part. And what the wire does is it slides in through one tube and around the top of it and out through the other tube. So let's go ahead and see it in real life what happens. Taking the end of the beading wire, slipping it through one of the tubes. You can see that it comes out of the other end. Going ahead and threading it over the top and down through into the other hole. So you can see it's going into the other hole. And then I'm just sliding down the wire so it sits in the channel. And you can see that I have a piece of wire, beading wire, coming out of either one of the ends. Now again, you can see that the beading wire sits on top, and so it's the inside of this that is going to be near the clasp. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and slide that on. So what I'm doing is I'm sliding on the toggle, or the round end of this toggle clasp, and you can see it's between the wire guardian. So now the next step is going to be going ahead and crimping the two ends of this beading wire together. This is the crimping tube. And what it is it's about 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. It's really just a tiny tube made, in this case, out of sterling silver. And what it's going to do is when we flatten it, it's going to hold the beading wire together, so it acts like as a stopper. So I'm taking the beading wire, sliding it through the tube, and then running it down the beading wire carefully so I don't undo the other end. Okay, where's my crimp tube? Oh, here it is. Okay, so I've slid it down, and right now you see it's only on one side of the beading wire, so what I'm going to do is take the tail end of the beading wire and slide it through, so both ends of the beading wire are through it. I'm going to run it up, and I'm going to have less of a tail now. I'm just going to gently pull the long end until it shortens just a little bit, because I don't want to waste too much wire. And so now I have the crimp up next to the guardian, and the guardian of course is attached to the clasp. Next step, we have to go ahead and crimp this in place so that none of this comes undone, because as you can see right now I can pull on it and this wire is going to be pulling out. This crimp is going to hold it in place so we can tug and tug and it's not going to come undone. Okay, we've got this in place. Now we need a pair of crimping pliers. Now, for these pliers you can see that there are holes and grooves in it. It's not flat on the interior surface. And these holes and grooves help to go ahead and crimp the tube. As you can see, when I hold them together, there's something that looks like a little half moon shape on the right and then a full circle on the left. These are what's going to put the crimp in the crimp tube. So what I do is I go ahead and carefully grab the crimp tube so that it sits like so. You see the two ends of the wire coming out front. I'm going to take this and I'm going to gently squeeze. And I'm using this on the half moon section. So you can see I've squeezed it together. And although this isn't the most perfect job in the world, you can see where I have tails coming out of either end and I have it kind of like smushed in the middle. So I could leave it just like this if I wanted to, but I like to go ahead and fold it over one more time because I think it looks a little bit better, and besides it makes it easier to put the crimp cover on. So what I'm doing this time is I am going ahead and putting it in the first hole. So it's sideways in the first hole. And I'm just going to gently, again, push the pliers together. And if I need to, I'll just go ahead and do it a little bit more. But there, that looks pretty good. So what I did is I went ahead and folded the tube over so that now it looks like a nice, neat little crimp. And we still see that I have the wire coming out of either end. Now it's time for the crimp cover. This is a crimp cover, and the purpose of this is to hide the crimp, because even though, you know, I did a fairly decent job on the crimp, it doesn't always look that way, and sometimes it's nice to be able to hide it and make it look like there's just another bead there. So what I did is I just gently slid it over the crimping tube. So you can see that it's covering it, and it's kind of sandwiching the little crimp tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a handy dandy pair of chain nose pliers, and with the, with the clasp out of the way, I'm just gently squeezing these together. And here's the crimp cover, and as you can see, it's not absolutely perfect. You can kind of see the seam, but all that really matters is that it's not rough when you put your fingers across it, and it's tight enough to stay in place. So the next will be going ahead and stringing some of the beads. Be back in a second. Okay, you can see where I've got a few beads strung on, but this tail, we really don't want it to show. So here's what I'm going to do to hide the tail. I just basically go ahead and make sure that I slide the beads over the tail. So you can see this bead is over. This next bead, and next, and next. And now the tail is safely inside this last bead and doesn't show, so it's not going to come undone. Let me go ahead and do the rest of the beads for this bracelet. I'll be back and we'll cover how to do the other end. Now that I have all the beads strung on, it's time to begin the end. So what I'm doing is I'm sliding on the crimp tube. Then I'm putting on the wire guardian so it goes over the first tube, over the top, down through the other tube of the guardian. So wire is through and over the guardian. Now I go ahead and take the other part of my clasp, and this is the toggle end, so I'm just sliding it on, and I want to make sure that it ends up between the guardian. So then you go ahead and slide it on down. So I've got it slid on down. I'm going to go ahead and put this through the crimp tube, assuming I can find the crimp tube. There we go. And you see it's kind of come out at the moment. Don't worry, because you'll go ahead and snug it back in. So back in through the guardian, and there we go. So what's next? Well, we have to crimp this end, and this end is just a little trickier to do. Okay, so you see that I have the wire coming out of the crimp tube. Now on this side, you want to leave a little bit of slack in here for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want your bracelet to be all tight. You want it to have a little bit of motion to it. And two, because when we crimp it, it's going to kind of extend a little or move out some. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of space, and also any extra space is really going to kind of be taken care of by the crimp cover. So once again, we go ahead, and what I'm going to do is do my crimp. Let's see if I can do this. Handy dandy. Okay, there I go. I'm crimping, and then going ahead and doing the opposite, slide it in horizontally, get it into a little tube. Make sure that you don't hit the wire guardian when you do this. And like I said, it's a little bit more problematic on this side on account of the fact that you've got beads up against it, and you don't have as much wiggle room. So you can see I pretty much got it on, and what I'm going to do now is go ahead and slide this end through some of the other beads. Okay, so off camera I needed to go ahead and get all the wire through the rest of the beads. What I did is I stuck it through about 3 or 4 of the beads, and then I used a pair of cutters to go ahead and nip the end of the beading wire so that it didn't show. And now I went ahead and slid on the crimp cover, so you can see it's there. And I will once again take the pliers and just gently go ahead and squeeze it. And this time, what you really want to do is be very, very gentle with it, because you've already had all this work and stringing everything on, and if you mess it up at this point, you have to start from the very beginning, which is something I don't want to do. So carefully just go ahead and squeeze these together. And if you think that you're running into problems, you just go ahead and reposition things like I just did, and go ahead and keep on squeezing. There we go. So, covered both ends. We've got our wire guardians, we've got our crimp cover, and underneath it we've got a crimp. We've got our clasp and our beads. Here we go. We've got a bracelet. There we go. This was a bracelet project, and what we did is we used wire guardians, crimp tubes, and crimp covers. Thanks a lot for watching. I do appreciate it. And this is Gail Nettles with Beaded Jewelry Diva. Have yourself a great day. Bye.